Now, I'm not a big reader, but I found in isolation I've been reading a bit more, just to pass the time and just to learn a bit more. And I want to share some of the books I've come across that you might be interested in. So I choose to read on a Kindle just because when you go on the internet and you find a good recommended book, you can go and buy the book straight away and send it to your Kindle and then just read it that night. So the first book I read was by Steven Pressfield called The War of Art. It's a non-fiction. It talks about like overcoming obstacles in creative endeavors. I've noticed that there is a big theme of just going and doing the work. Like you schedule it in and you just do it no matter what. You just sit down, and if you got a block, then you sort of work through that. Or, you know, if you're having a bad day of painting, you just work through that. You just do the work. So the reason why I downloaded the book was because I found it was interesting. Like sometimes I'm a bit stuck on, let's say I'm doing a project and I'm trying to create a story out of what the client wants, and I'm sort of just thinking like, oh, how can I shoot it so it looks good? So basically I thought, you know what, if I implement some of the ideas he talks about in the book, maybe it could help me in my video sort of stuff I do. So the second book I read was a book by David Goggins called Can't Hurt Me. It's a sort of biographical, non-fiction, self-help type of book, and I tend to really like self-help books because they help you. They're a bit cliche, but I don't know. You can find some really good ones and you can find some really bad ones, but this one seemed to be really good. It basically went over his life, how he grew up. You know, he was abused by his father, and him and his mum went off to live in another state, and he had a really rough time growing up. But he found, you know, a few methods to help him sort of cope with that and achieve what he wanted to do in life. So he shares what he's been through and what he's done to overcome the obstacles. Yeah, it was a really good book, and it really sucks you in, and it has some really good ideas. The reason I picked it up was it was basically a top seller on Amazon, and I thought, you know what, if other people like it, then maybe I'll like it. So the third book is by Jim Quick, and it's called Limitless. It's basically a book on learning how to learn, and he goes through some methods he learnt growing up to streamline his learning. So basically his history is when he was a kid, he had a couple of accidents where he got some brain damage, and it left him with a learning disability. So he found it very hard to take information in and retain it. So he tried all these different methods of learning, and eventually it got to a point where his learning was even quicker than his peers. So he sort of goes through the different methods he uses to streamline his learning, and it goes from like, you know, your mentality. He goes through like a bit of meditation, speed reading, and basically different methods of how to approach those different things to sort of learn quicker. The reason I picked up this book was because basically I found it on Amazon. I think it was one of the top sellers, and I like the sound of like streamlining learning. So right now I'm trying to be a cinematographer. Right now I'm just a videographer and editor, but I want to be a cinematographer. So I want to be able to study cinematography and take a lot of that in quicker than I would without using the methods. I'm only about a third of the way through, but I've implemented a lot of the things he's recommended to do, and I've found that my sort of mentality and concentration is a lot better now, and I'm definitely learning a lot quicker. As for the rest of the book, I'm not quite sure how it goes. I'm still going through it. Hopefully by the end, the next book after that I'll read will be a bit quicker. So I've got a couple more books on here, but they're more based on filmmaking and videography, so I don't think I'll go through them unless you guys are interested. So I think I'm going to end it there, and yeah, I'll leave links to the books below. There's some audiobook options. I know with the David Goggins book, he goes a bit more in depth with his story in the audiobook, and there's kind of like a mini podcast explaining the chapter. And I've heard it's really good, so maybe that's an option for you. Anyway, goodbye.